All right, so this is In Lockdown With. This is a project that I'm trying, that I'm starting, very nervous about, but very excited about. And my first guest on this side of the screen is Puno Silesho. It's really wonderful for you to join me on this big stunt of mine, Puno. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to have good conversations.
Always, always. So just for some background, I know you're already a celebrity, but for those that haven't had the privilege of knowing your celebrity status, so I'm going to share a screen. Don't judge me. I stalked you a little bit. Don't judge.
This is a bad idea.
So for those that don't know, now share screen mustn't sabotage me. Okay, good. So for those that don't know, Puno is a spoken word artist amongst many other talents. And this is an album she's just released or recently released called Word That Grow. My favorite on this is How to Wear Africa. I don't know if she'll share something with us about it, but I'm just putting it out there for people to know the kind of special people that I have the privilege of talking to. So Puno, you're a poet, and these are abnormal times for someone like you. A lot of your work is done in the public eye. You attend a lot of events. I've seen, by the way, Puno's YouTube is popping. If anyone is bored, wants something to do, search Puno Silesho on YouTube. But I see you do a lot of public stuff, and a lot of your work is people orientated. How are you managing this lockdown?
Sure. So I started having gigs get cancelled from January already. I had a international gig in, I think it was Cote d'Ivoire, that was scheduled, I think, for Jan. And that got cancelled because of Corona. There was one case in Cote d'Ivoire.
Yeah.
No one really knew about Corona in South Africa. People were like, why aren't you going? And I'd have to explain. They'd be like, oh, okay. So I started already having the effects quite early on.
Wow.
But as soon as the Corona cases increased, and especially since lockdown happened, I think I've had at least 5 gigs get cancelled or postponed, and obviously potential gigs or things that could have come from that. Obviously now the trail goes cold.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to navigate. What I did do in order to, like, fast thinking, okay, income still has to happen, was buy like a recording mic the day of lockdown to be like, there still could be voice work, there still could be other things, but it has been tough. It has been interesting to navigate that space. Yeah.
Sure. Well, have you always done spoken word poetry, or is there a background to your story?
I started spoken word poetry in 2010, so this is my 10-year anniversary of poetry.
That's amazing. You look so young to have been doing something for that long.
I know. Thank you so much. Thank you. I started when I was in grade 10, so it was purely for the sake of like talent show kind of vibe at school, and for the sake of like I enjoyed it, people obviously started noticing, and then it became a thing of doing it in more public spaces, corporate, etc. Because I studied law, I thought I was going to be in the legal route.
There it is. You just like jumped over that real quick. So you're a lawyer. That's what you're trying to tell me.
I mean, I've absorbed legal knowledge.
You are a lawyer. Congrats on that. It's not a small feat. It's you park there, really like take it in. You're a lawyer. It's a big achievement.
Thank you. My parents are very proud.
So you decided that the legal route's not really for you long term.
Yeah, not because it's a bad space, not because it's not an effective space, but I think because I've got quite a business brain, I've got quite a creative brain, and I do have a level of advocacy and a sense of justice in me. I wanted to pursue a space that could combine all of these things. So yes, I've done the almost academic side of law. Now I'm pursuing how to make business connections and things, and I'm also pursuing how to enhance and grow my creativity. And it's almost like each part takes a couple of years. It's like I'm learning a bunch of stuff. And one day it's going to come to a point where it all culminates and becomes a thing, whether it's running a social enterprise, whether it's some program, some product, something, just being a person that influences communities and uplifts communities in a good way. So I don't know what the grand thing is, if that thing even exists, but I just know for this period of my life, I speak up for people. I am a poet. I write and create as much as I can. It went from being a hobby into a career, which is insane.
Sure.
But I have no regrets. Yeah.
Wow, wow. So I can imagine it's a little bit easier to be creative and to find narratives to speak about when you can engage with people. But my interest is in this time where, I mean, people are at home most of the time. Maybe it's an introvert's dream, but I think for someone who derives a lot of, their passion and a lot of the narratives from the outside, how do you find that spark? By the way, where are you right now? You're at home,
I am in my parents' house in Pretoria. I've come back to the nest. Yeah. The option was there to potentially do lockdown on my own in my own place, but it was, yeah, life led me to this moment, and I'm grateful that it did, because I think I would have lost my mind, and also missed out on a lot of opportunities to spend time with my family and to get to know them better. So that's been really cool. But what's been interesting is, in terms of drawing off of people and observing the world, you'll be surprised how much you can get away with on social media, because I think everybody turned to Facebook and Instagram. I'm not really a Twitter person, but the memes on WhatsApp, the things we were sending around, you could see the waves. You could see the initial, like, this is interesting, what's happening, kind of a little bit of a panic, to like, oh my goodness, it's actually real.
Yeah.
To like really grief.
Yeah.
People went in and almost like a depressed state, we're never going to survive, to a like, oh wait, okay, these 21 days are not so bad, to the extension, panic again, and you see all these waves happen by like paying attention. And now people are almost in I don't want to say a hopeless, helpless state, but some people are there. Some people have found ways to make the best of this time, and some people kind of bounce in between the two. And I think a lot of us are still in denial, because we know there's a new normal that's coming, but because we can't taste it or feel it or touch it or understand it, we're still kind of hoping to go backwards. So
yes.
basically what I'm saying is, I've been able to gauge where people are at and what's happening in the atmosphere by paying attention to what's happening online, and also paying attention to what's happening in my own head and heart, because that's also a reflection of my environment. And so that's what I can draw from in terms of writing at the moment. Yeah.
You seem quite positive. Not that it's a bad thing. No, not that it's a bad thing. It's just, so you mentioned that a lot of people are drawing, so interactions that were once like person to person are now done on social media. That's our new norm. And a lot of for me, I found a lot of the feeling from there is like two extremes. So it's either making everything frivolous and funny, memes and stuff, or like a very deep sense of loss and sorrow. So I'll say, like, for myself, all the memes about the gym being closed and how people are gonna run back to the gym like, dry animals to water. That's like something that appeals to me, and I feel sorrow, like I'm mourning. Like right now, that's why I'm wearing black, by the way, because I'm mourning that I've lost something. So that's the feeling. It's either we don't take things seriously at all and we don't like delve into that space of pain, or you just sit in that rut of like, the world is kind of ended in a sense. And like you say, there's no real tangible knowledge of what the new norm will be. So it's kind of difficult to be expectantly positive. So it's very interesting for me, and I think quite encouraging that you do have this positivity. And if you have a link for it, can you send it to us so we can all double click the link? and also, so I'm just interested where you derive it from.
Well, I'll say this, like, I think, in terms of the humor that we use, I think South Africans, we've always done that. We've always used humor to cover up trauma, especially because our traumas are, they perpetuate pain. So we just laugh about it, because what else? Otherwise, our souls kind of die. And there's almost like a collective trauma that's happening all at the same time. And also, people don't know necessarily how to cope with hard emotions. We haven't been taught that. We haven't been raised that way. Maybe yes, millennials now we're learning,
Mm.
but I think that's why humor is an escape. So yeah, I don't know what else to say on that. Just
Mm.
almost I have an empathy and a compassion when I see somebody continuously posting things that are like almost cynical or humorous, because you can tell that there's something else.
There's pain deep
Um,
down, yeah.
yeah, I think we're struggling really to comprehend all of this. But I think my optimism. So I mean, I'm a eternal optimist or relentless optimist. I've been called before. But I think I'm more of a realist in the sense of, if you look back at history, we have seen human beings overcome so much. Yes, we've seen human beings go through a lot of trauma. I mean, we can go from slavery to the Great Depression to all the First to the Second World War to the Cold War to the Holocaust. There's been so much stuff, and please do not take me as comparing COVID-19 to any of those really like massive things, and a lot of lives were lost. A lot of people came out traumatized from those things.
Yeah,
But what I'm saying is humanity is resilient.
yeah.
I'm not saying people are not going to pass away. I'm not saying we're not going to come out of this more scarred. I'm not saying that the most vulnerable in our society, be it women, be it children, be it people who are living on or below the breadline, are not
Mm.
incredibly affected.
Mm.
But people who hold on to hope or believe that there is another side to this, or the people who actually come out, who are the people who actually can create stuff of value in this time, who can bring
Mm.
solutions, who almost help people try find the bright side without being naive and frivolous,
Yeah.
as you had mentioned before. Because
Mm.
being almost pretending like the world is not burning around us is not helpful either.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the world has burned down many times before, and we have
Yeah.
rebuilt it again many times before. So almost sticking to that in my brain
Mm.
has helped. Yeah.
Sure. That's helpful. That is really helpful. You mentioned something that might be a bit spicy to talk about now, and maybe the mind map that it opens might be too vast for our conversation. But I'm going to double click on it nonetheless, and you'll say you'll say if it's too much. But there's a lot of talk now about the whole cabin fever effect. So not everyone has the privilege of locking down in a safe way, and in a way that's domestically comfortable. Not everyone has a big house. Not everyone's domestic circumstances are the same. So there's rhetoric that, or there's yeah, let's call it rhetoric, that domestic violence is a theme that has existed for a long time in our country, I think. And I think when different topics kind of pop up, it kind of takes the podium for a bit, and then things settle down. Then we remember, look, a lot of people are suffering under domestic violence, and then something else takes over. But I think in a time like this, especially with the extension, there's things bubbling under in people's homes, and I think the risk for vulnerable populations to be at risk for domestic violence is a lot higher now, and it's actually helpful that there's a conversation around it. A lot of your poetry is, I would say, fairly feminist, positively so. I found it a lot very encouraging and very challenging to listen to some of your poetry. But I think that that's been a good thing for me as a young Black South African male. But for you, as what I would call an advocate for women, for Black women, for young Black women, what's your what's your summarized opinion on COVID-19 in South Africa with our rich and painful history of interpersonal and domestic violence?
Sure. So this, I think, has been um, the area which has helped, which the area which has made me feel helpless during COVID-19. This is what I often find myself thinking about when I'm lying in bed or whatever, just like, wow. Because as somebody who considers himself quite outspoken about female issues, about violence against women, whether it's in one-on-one conversations or in poetry, I had to ask myself the question of like, what is a poem gonna do now? I could say a
Mm,
poem, but I'm not in that person's home. I'm not helping her. I'm
mm,
not defending her against the guy. That
mm,
guy is probably never gonna listen to my poem or hear it or have the opportunity based on the kind of platforms that I'm on.
Sure.
What am I doing? What effect do I
Mm,
have? And
mm,
I don't have an answer to that question, and that's quite difficult. But it also makes me know that it's because it's scratching at my heart so much. It's an area that I do want to be able to contribute to help to try figure out understand,
mm,
and also knowing that the work needs to be done in terms of how we like the work with men specifically,
mm,
because the only person that can or the only person that needs to change in a situation, let's say it's between a husband and a wife, or a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or a dad and the daughter, it's the guy. So how do we get to the heart and the mind of the guy? How do we change the social circumstances that has raised that guy to become what he is? How do we heal him from his traumas so that he does not perpetuate that space?
mm,
And we need to realize that sometimes these big campaigns and the ribbons we wear and what day,
mm,
kind of, not that it means nothing, but clearly it's not effective enough.
the roof when you start speaking. For you, as a young Black South African woman, as a professional and as a poet, what would your message to your fellow South Africans be um, today, taking into account, the process we've gone through from the time, like you mentioned, when we heard things and it was a little bit funny, but also a little bit panicked. We didn't know much, and then there's been this surge of information, and then I think the surge of emotions that we don't really know how to process. And now perhaps a glimmer of hope. We're not sure, but I think we kind of on the second half of the lockdown extension. So I think people are beginning to see some light somewhere there, but not really know what to make of it. What would your message to your fellow average South African be going forward?
So we have Freedom Day coming up, and I've been commissioned to write a poem for Freedom Day for a client I'd previously worked for, and they want me to reflect on what does Freedom Day mean for us now in this kind of a space.
Okay.
So my brain the whole day has been all over the place
Mm,
of like, what would I tell like South Africans about Freedom Day? Like, like what does it actually mean now? Because life has changed, everything has
yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
But what I would say, and I think what I'm going to write about is something I read in an article which said this is the great pause.
Mm,
It's a brilliant way to frame it because
mm,
life as we know it has literally stopped. We
sure.
are in survival mode and kind of fight or flight kind of a phase. But in this great pause, we need to see this almost as a rude awakening and as an opportunity. So, number one, notice that you are resilient enough to get through stuff. Notice the stuff that you use in order to survive in times of panic, whether it's people, whether it's the resources that you use, whether it's spiritually, like what do you lean on, whether it's your friends or family. Notice those things because trials and tribulations are there in life all the time. And
Mm,
this is a great opportunity in this great pause to notice what keeps you resilient, what keeps you strong, what keeps you going. You didn't think you'd
mm,
make it to day 21, and look at we here at what day 26 or something like
yeah.
that. So you
Yeah.
are resilient, but take note of that stuff.
Sure.
Because it's like almost it's like your backpack. What are you going to put in your life backpack to help you
Yeah.
as you go forward?
Yeah.
Um, I would also say that it's time for us to reshuffle our priorities. I think the subject of the most vulnerable and more the ones who are economically vulnerable and socially and who just don't have access to the most basic of things, whether it's
Mm,
healthcare, whether it's food, whether it's whatever. I think it's finally on the agenda. It's been on the agenda before, but it's kind of like, unemployment numbers, we hear it and, we move on. But now it's properly on the agenda. And for me, it's a call to like big businesses, to normal humans, like, what are we going to do about this?
mm,
Because it's not their problem. It's not an NGO's problem. It's our problem. It's everyone's problem. I read another article today which said that there are more poor people than there are kind people. We can't rely just on people's kindness and generosity anymore. It doesn't work.
mm,
Um, and I would lastly also just say that I think, yes, optimism, I hear that. I hear like people are like, oh, hold on to joy and, all of those things. But I think hope is the most important thing that we need to have, because I've been reading up on hope quite a bit, and it's actually, there's a formula to it. which says that you take the situation as it is.
Mm,
You look at all the problems that it has. You don't try and move it. You don't try and work your way around it. But having the belief, number one, that
mm,
you are able to get through it, creating various options to get through it, so you don't just have one plan, you have multiple plans, and having a very specific objective.
okay.
And all of those things need to be present in order for hope to survive. So what is your
Oh,
objective in this time? What are the different pathways that you're going to use to get there? And do you
mm,
truly believe that you can achieve that? And if we can apply that in how we view everything and be relentless about it, like be ridiculously adamant on the fact that we are going to be fine,
mm,
then we'll be fine. But if we
sure.
give up too easily, then it's a problem.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sure, that's really powerful. So basically, you're giving people homework. So this thing of sitting around the whole day and looking at the stars is not a vibe. No, that's really helpful. I think what I take from what you're saying, especially, is that there's an opportunity. It's we're not taking away from anything else that it is. Opportunity to be hopeful, and it's not this mystical idea that's floating in the sky. Tangibly, you can actually work towards creating a picture of hope in your own life, and that's really wonderful. That's really cool. I want to be naughty before this call ends. Again,
Do it. Do it. Do
don't
it. Do
shout
it.
at
Do
me.
it.
So, like I said, I was stalking you, and I found a really awesome piece did a while ago. If I can get it, there it is. It was a piece you did in
Oh, okay.
2015. Can you see?
Yeah.
There's a line from it.
TBT.
There's a line from it that I want to play, if you will allow me.
Go for it.
Okay.
Because she knew that the moment you entered this earth, you were diagnosed with humanity, a mortal sanity. Your spirit was destined, or is it doomed, to bleed and bleed, searching for that hope tree, searching for that faith seed, but hope died.
That piece of yours is that at the core, there's something within us that is deeply humane, and that's something that's quite central to our being. And I think that's probably a challenge to society, particularly with what you were mentioning. We have the capacity to see that, and we're seeing that now. Our government has, in an instant, literally just in the snap of a finger, cut people's salaries to more fairly allocate them. And you wonder, why do we need to get into such a corner before we start thinking like that as a society? But yeah, something that's really wonderful. So I do encourage you to keep writing the way that you have been doing. I wish you the best of luck for the Freedom Day piece. If it's anything like a piece of yours, is that at the core, there's something within us that is deeply humane, and that's something that's quite central to our being. And I think that's probably a challenge to society, particularly with what you were mentioning. We have the capacity to see that, and we're seeing that now. Our government has, in an instant, literally just in the snap of a finger, cut people's salaries to more fairly allocate them. And you wonder, why do we need to get into such a corner before we start thinking like that as a society? But yeah, something that's really wonderful. So I do encourage you to keep writing the way that you have been doing. I wish you the best of luck for the Freedom Day piece. If it's anything like what I've seen, I think it's going to hit the spot quite well.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for you to be doing stuff like this and having important conversations. Like, I think there are a lot of people who are thinking very similar things, and it helps to see people saying stuff and that are in the same situation, because it's not like I'm speaking about this stuff from the outside. You are in a freaking hospital. Like, we are in this.
Yeah.
So people can relate to us.
We are inside. Yeah.
So thank you to you. This is really cool, and keep doing it and keep having more conversations. It's awesome.
No, man, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me in this experiment. I don't know how far it'll go, but for your time, I always say this to people that I consider significant. There'll be a time when I'm going to have to pay you for this time. So while I have it for free, I deeply, deeply appreciate it. Yeah, and I do wish you all the best.